everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and I recently got this comment on a video asking about Lilith. Now, there's only one occurrence of the word Lilith anywhere in the Hebrew Bible, and that's in Isaiah 34:14, and this is part of a prophecy about how Jerusalem would become desolate and would be the habitation of a bunch of these liminal creatures that occupy the space between the natural and the supernatural, such as Lilith, which is a borrowing from an Akkadian term, which referred to a species of divine being probably associated with female deviant sexuality. In Hebrew, it sounds an awful lot like the word for night, and so it probably also had connotations of female deities that torment men in the night and have something to do with nocturnal emissions and things like that. But if we fast forward to the first few centuries of the Common Era, we have some Jewish traditions that are trying to harmonize the two different creation accounts we find at the beginning of Genesis. One of them runs from Genesis 1:1 to the beginning of Genesis 2:4, and the other runs from the second half of Genesis 2:4 to the end of Genesis 3. And one of the methods of harmonizing the two is to understand them as consecutive acts. So Genesis 1:26 and 27 is the initial first creation of humanity. And then Genesis 2 and 3, the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, is a second creation of specifically Eve, who is taken from the side of Adam. And so according to this harmonization, there was another woman before Eve was created. And if we fast forward several more centuries to somewhere between 700 and about 1000 CE, there's a text known as the Alphabet of Ben Sira, which talks about a bunch of different Jewish traditions. And one of them identifies that first pre-Eve woman as Lilith. So we're combining Jewish traditions related to Lilith with this attempt to harmonize the two creation accounts at the beginning of Genesis. And in this story, Lilith says, I want to be on top. And yes, this is about exactly what you think it is about. And she says, we are equal. I want to be on top. And Adam says, no, you're not fit to be on top. Only I am fit to be on top. So Lilith storms out of the Garden of Eden, and this upsets God, who then sends 3 angels after her to bring her back. And these angels' names are Sanoi, Sansonoi, and Semangaloth. And they come to her and say, you got to come back to the Garden of Eden with us. And she says, not going to do it, wouldn't be prudent. And once more, I'm going to go be responsible for the deaths of newborn babies. But if they have a protective amulet with your 3 names on it, Sanoi, Sansonoi, and Semangaloth, I will have no power over that baby for the first 8 days. And so this is probably an etiological story or an origin story for the use of apotropaic amulets. So apotropaic means warding off evil. So protective amulets that had these names on it, these angelic names that was used for newborn babies. And it was woven into this story that was also combining the tradition of Lilith with the traditional attempt to harmonize those two creation accounts. And that's probably where we first get the idea of Lilith as Adam's first wife in the Garden of Eden, who ultimately voluntarily leaves the Garden of Eden and never comes back. And the fit for this video has been a black and white version of Jim Lee's X-Men number 11.
Now, while Dan answered the questions excellently, and thank you, Dan, I'm going to add a lot more context to that question that was not actually asked, but just to add you the context. Now, you saw me hold up my hand of Hansama, right? Now, many people will say that, oh, look at him, he doesn't believe in these religions, but he's wearing the protective amulet of the hand of Hansama. Well, to give you more history on it, the hand of Hansama is actually older than the Islamic religion. And it has been used for every religion. In Judaism, it was called the hand of Miriam. In Christianity, it was also called, and it's the hand of Fatima is the actual name, not Hansama is the hand itself. It's the hand of Fatima in Islam, and in Christianity it was called the hand of Mary. From around 700 CE until 1526, I believe, is when it was considered the hand of Mary, since Mary was born without sin, and she was a virgin, and she had a baby as a virgin, and she was forever without sin. Christian women used to have this amulet hanging above their children's cribs or hanging above a door or just in their house if they were trying to get to get pregnant. So this is also a Christian symbol. 500 years ago is when it was canceled out. And this is why people today don't know that, because it's been 500 years and you've become acclimated to not representing this symbol. Now, where did it come from? Our oldest thought process as far as the Lilith and the Lulutu goes all the way back to the Sumerian time frame. The evil eye in itself is around the world, and it was used in Samaria as well as in Kemet and other places in the Near East and Far East. But the idea of Lilith stems from the Epic of Gilgamesh. So go and research, go look up the Epic of Gilgamesh and read it for yourself. And what you will find is that you had the goddess Inanna. In the Babylonian, her name was Ishtar. Inanna was married to Dumuzi. Dumuzi died, and after his death, Inanna kept seeing Dumuzi. Every lover she had after her husband died, she saw him as Dumuzi, thinking that she had immortality in her pum pum. She would have sex with these men and these men would die. So then in comes Gilgamesh, who in some stories he's her brother, in other stories he's not. But in comes Gilgamesh, the Sumerian king, Akkadian king, who supposedly ruled for 10,000 years. But Gilgamesh, who was half Anunnaki, came to Inanna at her request because Anu had told Inanna to plant a tree near the Euphrates at the time of creation. But the tree had become inhabited by a snake that could not be charmed and some bird called an Azu. And also a demon wind spirit called the Lulutu, called the Lilith. So Gilgamesh comes, he kills the snake, gets rid of the bird, chops down the tree, and makes some furniture for Inanna. Inanna, he does this because he also wanted Inanna to give him the secret to immortality, to which then it goes into the Atrahasis, where he goes and finds Utnapishtim, or Atrahasis. If you're reading the Atrahasis, she goes and finds Atrahasis. If you're reading the Babylonian story, he goes and finds Utnapishtim to find out who is the Noah of the Sumerian and Babylonian story, which was written before the Hebrew story. He goes to find them so that he can figure out how to have and gain immortality, since those two were given immortality at the end of the flood. When the Lulutu is cast out of the tree, it scurries off, and is believed that it is a female wind deity that lives out in the desert that preys on newborn babies and causes dysfunction within men and women. Because Inanna was a goddess of love and erotica, this was her direct adversary as far as a woman, being Lulutu, and Lilut was the male version of it. Now this story is also in the Greek, except the name is Liama. Liama becomes a concubine, so to speak, of Zeus. Hera gets jealous, and every child that Liama has with Zeus, she cuts off their legs, and the legs turn to snakes and other demon-like animals. And then Liama is expelled, and then she decides that for her revenge, she would go and kill the women and kill babies and lurk out in the desert and draw men out into the desert. And so this was also a popular story in the North African desert area. So basically what you have is Lilith being cast out of the Garden of Eden, the Lulutu tree being planted outside of the Garden of Creation and inhabiting that tree, and then further becoming this demon out in the desert, because men would wander out in the desert and get lost. Children would wander out in the desert and get lost. So they needed a deity. They created a deity that facilitated why this is happening. Women weren't able to have children, so the Greeks, the Sumerians, all these people, they created this deity for why these things were not happening. And then in the Midrash that Dan was talking about, they created a whole nother story involving her as the first woman of creation. Personally, I think they did it so that they can sell amulets in the Middle Ages, because that's when the story really took on its popularity, and selling amulets was big business. So What do you guys think? And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey. Good